So I don't see any additional folks. Did I get that wrong?
Anne's here. Hi, Anne.
Right, but no visitors yet.
No visitors, man. All right. So let's call this to order. Do we need to read the introduction there?
Yes, so this is the regular Conservation Commission meeting on December 7, 2020. I'm Bruce Lofgren from the Office of Planning and Development staff. Larry Dunn is the chairman of the Conservation Commission. He will be the host of he'll be running the meeting. Anyone that would like to speak from the public, any attendees can do so during the public communications portion of the agenda. Also, during certain agenda items at the discretion of the chairman. To do so, you would just raise your virtual hand and is either located on the top or bottom of your screen, depending on if you're using an Apple or PC device. If there are any call-in listeners, you dial *9 and we will see that you want to talk and we'll allow you to participate one at a time. With that, I'll let Larry Dunn call a roll.
All right. Larry Dunn, chair. Ray
Rafferty, vice chair.
Michelle.
Del Fitzpatrick, secretary.
Tom.
Tom Olson, member.
Kristen.
Kristen Distante, member.
Ann.
Ann Schmidt, member.
And Karen.
Aaron Scapino, member.
All right, so we have a full attendee list and we have a lot of things to go over today. First item of business is approval of meetings. And I believe that's in the agenda package. So I'll open up. Are there any comments on the November 2nd meeting?
This is Tom Olson. I have one comment. I know we listed in the members present Karen, and I think we just she was designated to be a member, but technically wasn't. So I think we just should put a little asterisk and says pending or something like that, just to correct
That's a good point.
finalize the record formally.
Yeah, thanks for that, Tom. I didn't catch that.
Yep. Yeah, she's not in the vote tallies.
No, she is. All the rest of it is clean. That's kind of say just putting like a little asterisk note or something about that. Her membership was she was determined to be a member, but not actively a member.
All right. Any other comments? All right. Look for a meeting to accept the minutes as amended by Mr. Olson.
I move that we approve the minutes as amended.
Second.
Second.
All in favor, raise your hand. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Uh-oh, my view is screwed up. Hold on.
They're all up.
Yeah. There we go. They're all okay. All approved. I had to switch my view to get everyone involved. All right, so the next item of business would be public communications. Now, having said that, the only public communications were on a letter from Craig Guild and Eugenia. They were kind of on the same topic, was the Colonel Ledyard School. And Zell put in a memo based upon his comments at the public hearing. So that's, to me, that's just a continuation of that. Now, that would be, since they're not here.
We have 4 people here, Larry.
Oh, let me go.
How do you
look.
see that, Michelle?
You got to bring up
If you open
participants.
participants, there's a the participants thing at the
Oh.
bottom. It gives you the column, and then there's a tab for panelists and a tab for attendees.
All right, well, I will now backtrack. Those were memos that we got in. I will open the floor. Is any of the 4 attendees have something to say? Please use the raise hand feature.
Barbara.
Yeah, Barbara. I'll allow Barbara to talk first.
All right. Go ahead, Barbara.
You just have to unmute yourself, Barbara. No, you're muted. You need
Still
to,
muted.
let me see, maybe I can do it for her.
How's that?
Hey,
Okay. My colleague, Diana Stanzione was also supposed to be on this. She may join us in a minute. I am chairman of the Conservation Committee for the Mystic Garden Club. And just wanted you all to know that as representing the Garden Club and also wanting to be active within the town of Groton, we are very interested in supporting you in whatever way. We're particularly interested in pollinator pathway. There are a number of our members who are very aware of planting native plants. I myself am designated on the pollinator pathway. I did that by going on to the Stonington website. But what I noticed in doing a bit of research is that the communities that are on the pollinator pathway are primarily that it's spearheaded by the town, which is why I'm talking to you folks and really pleased to see that you are interested in wanting to be involved. So that's about it. Any questions?
No, I would ask Barbara if you could send your contact information to Bruce. So we do have a list of, let's call it, the community of conservation organization. So we'd like to include you in that.
Great.
And also one of our.
I don't have Bruce on my screen. Oh, there it is. Bruce
yeah.
Rafferty.
Bruce, can you put it in the?
No,
chat?
Bruce Lofgren.
Oh, I'm town of Groton staff. Doesn't show my name.
I thought you're Bruce.
Yeah.
Town of Groton staff. I'll have to write that down. And how do I get your email? So
I can give it. Yeah, I can just give it to you now quickly. It's my name, so it's B, and then last name LOFGREN.
LOF as in Frank?
Yeah, F as in Frank, GREN.
GREN. Okay.
Yeah, and that's at groton-ct.gov.
Okay. I will give my information to you as well as my fellow Conservation Committee member, Diane Stanzione, Stanzione. She lives in the town of Groton, as do I.
All right, thank you. What we normally, or what we have started doing is there's a list of actions, which we're going to get to later in the meeting. And we're forming kind of like subcommittees that attack them. One of those, by the way, happens to be pollination or pollinator garden. So that fits right into that. So we'll, I know, Kristen, you're, that hits one of your hot buttons. So thank you for that input, and we will be sure to make use of your volunteering.
Okay, thank you, Larry.
All right, there's additional 3 volunteers. Anyone, if you would raise your hand if you're.
Yep, the next person is Diana.
Hi, I'm Diana Stanzione. I'm the other part of Barbara, along with our committee. One thing I wanted to mention was the Greenway. You know, if there was a possibility to incorporate native plantings there, we would also be interested in following that project.
Let me think about that. Well, as a town property, Bruce, is I think that we would have to then make some requests or work that through the town, that we don't do plantings per se, right?
We're
Okay,
not really there yet, I don't think,
okay,
Yeah.
that's fine.
yet.
Yeah. Now, to understand it, our first order of business is to get the greenways established. And then the next is stewardship. So we do have a section on stewardship coming up. And that might be an interesting segment under that, Tom, on, is there something to consider in removing invasive species? I know that's in there. I don't know about adding things, if that was in there or not.
This is Tom Olson. At this time in the draft stewardship plan, there's really not a section set aside for that. Not to say that it can't be added in the future. I think it's a good comment that the Garden Club is bringing forward here that we need to take into consideration. Also, I guess my question would be, have you been one of the things is that a lot of the pollinator, the green belts that we are trying to get upgraded to greenways to get the state support, have a number of park areas that are controlled by parks and then open space. And I know that GOSA has been like in some of the private sections also, like GOSA and Avalonia. I know GOSA and Avalonia both have been working on native plantings and are very aware of the efforts in that area. I don't know exactly where Parks and Rec is. So I'd also encourage you as part of the greater Groton community here to approach the Parks and Rec folks in the Park Commission in regard to what they're, and we're just not aware of what they're doing in that specific of arena at this time. We will be trying to work with them in the future, but I just point that out to you as far as as I was requested. Thank you.
Okay, a little too soon.
Kristen?
Yeah, another avenue is, I brought the Pollinator Pathway program. It's pollinatorpathway.org. I think it's a very specific group that I've reached out to the town. Didn't get a lot of feedback. I think it was right before all the pandemic business came out, but also the Groton Beautification Committee, they've had an approach and they seem very receptive to this idea of joining the official Pollinator Pathway group and coalition and being supportive of that. So hopefully maybe as spring comes, we can actually get some motion in that direction.
Great.
Be happy
Thank
to
you.
work with you.
I just wanted to add very briefly is that I've heard from members of the Garden Committee that they are interested in helping when it comes time to planting. And we will see. It's normally we make most of our money during the green sale. Some of you may have attended in the past. That's no longer a source of revenue for us, but in the past, and maybe we have some money that would be available or donations from members who have native plants from their own gardens that they would be willing to share and plant in either the open spaces or on the pollinator pathway. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Let's see, Eugenia and Mary Ellen, do either of you want to say something, or we'll move along with the agenda? Okay, we will move along with the agenda. We will pick up under new business. Oh, I guess we don't actually have something on new business. We probably should add that, Bruce. The Colonel Ledyard School under new business, which we'll put at the end. All right. So major item business is the open space plan. We did have the public hearing. Did get a lot of input. I'm going to turn it over to Tom. He's done a bunch of edits to take into account the input we've gotten. That was distributed in the agenda. So let me turn it over to Tom and see if we can get through the plan. You're on mute.
I'm unmuted now. Okay.
Okay.
As requested at the public hearing, and as noted during our discussions there, I said I would update the plan to take the comments that we received from the public hearing and put those into a marked up version. And that's what you have in front of me. There was, so I don't know if you want me to go through those one by one or how we want to do this, but generally speaking, this edit that's in here has a number of additional things that were not addressed in the public hearing also. Principally some typographical errors that were additionally found, and also all the links for any of the references relative to the new town website were all updated. And so I've got those all highlighted throughout and that's because there's a lot of change markings through here. And why we have so many items in there. So I'm trying to bring up the Groton Space Plan. Okay, there it is. I'll be able to share here in a second.
So I think given the amount of changes, I'll throw it open for discussion. So Michelle, you had your hand up?
Right. So this is Michelle Fitzpatrick. I would make a suggestion that I don't know that we need to go through every single change. But maybe, Tom, if there's anything in there that you think is big enough that we really need to pay attention to it, and or that we need to have a discussion in case we want to make an edit.
I appreciate that, and that's how come I'm sharing my screen now, and I'm scrolling through very quickly through the pages. I'm pretty familiar with this. Is why I'm going through this rapidly. There's the pages going by me because there's really not much here that people addressed. Let's see if I keep going through these. There were some efforts in regard to the Groton utility reservoirs. I made a comment here. Again, this is more of a tweak. So I just, if anybody has, I basically took out and just did a little bit of rewording to make sure that we had all the critical things relative to the drinking water items discussed properly. So I don't think there's anything controversial here. It was more of just that was pointed out and what I have updated there. And then and that was pretty much all through chapter 2. Some typographical errors here. That's all changes on references. And the biggest change that was an ad here that was forwarded to me and this is, Tom Olson's essentially comment that came in from the Nature Conservancy. They in the November 2020 edition of it, they broadcast information in regard to a new tool that they have made available through the web. And what this tool does, and this is a sample of it, it tells you that everything in gray is a developed areas. Don't worry about it. And then these are in the stuff that goes from yellow to light green to dark green. These are the areas that are the most resilient to be able to support wildlife and fauna in the future based on the impacts of climate change. And so that's how come you see a lot of areas like down here in Groton Long Point. It's all that I'm highlighting in here in Noank. These are areas that are very subject to climate change. And even though this is a conservation area right in here in the Groton Long Point, I'm using this as a good example, is that's currently a conservation area, but it's going to be inundated with climate change, with the sea level rise. And so you don't want to be going into that area. So you take a look at the areas in here. This is your I-95 corridor. This is the area for Candlewood Hill, the Paulson property, the town dump. This is a very good area that we would want to focus in on in our future efforts. Okay, so this is where this is a kind of a good map and mapping tool to be provided. That's why I added it to our discussions in section 3.2. I just added a 3.2.3 resilient and connected lands. That's what it's called. And this is, they advocate for the future conservation actions of where the wild things are going to be. And that's what this mapping tool does. So I thought it was pretty impressive. It matches exactly with everything else that we have. But our other recommendations as far as staying away from inundation and that type of area, staying away from the developed areas are very well mapped in here for Groton. And it does give us some good indications of areas that I really hadn't thought about being so usable for future habitat and worthy of saving. So this is like, I'm just using this as a good example that I picked up fairly quickly from this. So as long as, I'm looking for basically consensus that this would be a thing to be putting in here. I had put the words in here. It's a fairly compact paragraph and section. It didn't really affect very much, but it added 2 more references as reference 45 and 46. And so everything had to get retooled after it. So any questions on this?
No, I think it's
it's great
awesome, Tom.
too.
Good job.
Okay, so that's the biggest item. And then the other ones, and then what I did is in concert with that is I updated the one recommendation here. The second recommendation, we still had already preparing for climate change and using the FEMA grants. And then I said utilizing the resilient land mapping tool just for completeness and tie back into the document. So that was another change that was tied to this effort. Okay. And I updated this in chapter 7, of course, for the consolidations. Okay. And so you're going to see a lot of changes of every reference after here gets updated. So there's really nothing here. The recommendations for tree advisory board. We had some, I took a little bit because there were some comments in regard to the zoning and stuff that we heard about with the tree planting. I tried to get that to be as close to change it to more than an equal number of native trees. That was the other contentious area that I did pick up on. So that I did make a modification there for more than in 2 locations there. So, and then all the rest is some references. And I think that's pretty much the only other area. Integration, I didn't change anything here. Nothing in here. All references. Just scooting through this and looking for the any of this change. We're down to chapter 7. So that's pretty much it as far as what I took in. A couple of the typographical stuff. Put in the I took in comments in regard to the watershed and to the trees. I added the resilient land mapping tool, and that's about it.
Thank you.
Thanks, Tom. There was one area about, gee, it should have been shorter. I'd like to defer that for a separate discussion as part of our outreach program with the community. So I'd like to limit this discussion to the document as stated. So I know it was out there. I've kind of read through it. Are there any questions that any of you have as to the changes that have been made? Ray?
I want to thank Tom for the great work he did. I have one question as I read through this thing more recently that came to mind is on page 13 of the document. There's a map of forest and farmland, and I have a question for Tom on that.
Okay, yeah, let me get to that right here. This page right here.
Yes, and when I look at the figure 1, 2, it says forest and farmland map, and was I correct in reading that the forest and farmland that's been designated on this is actually that which is under 490?
That's correct, and I think that it said that up here.
Right. So if you go back down to the legend for the map.
Okay, I'll try to blow that up a little bit here.
No, just where it says figure 1, right, forest and farmland. If you could add to that Act 490 designation. In other words, when you go through that, that doesn't really mean forest and only forest and farmland. Yes.
something like that.
Yeah, that would do it. Right, so when we look at that, that's important for us as we're looking, moving ahead on the linkages and so forth. But yes, it's much clearer that where we're actually talking what is under 490 right now.
Yeah.
Thank you.
All right,
The only other thing I wanted to mention was that we had gotten before the public hearing an email from Sydney Van Zandt in regard to the Crosstown Trail, and those comments were also included in Chapter 7 in the appropriate section there. I'm trying to zoom to those right now, and that, yeah, it was right in here that that's 4.2 and 4.1. She asked about the Crosstown Trail being an X, and also original Greenbelt comments there. So those were also included.
A quick, Bray, a quick question back. On page 72, there's an empty page. Could you?
That may be an artifact of the way I'm showing it right now with all the comments and stuff that can end up in there. I'll definitely, there is not any empty pages per se, but so.
And once you get rid of track changes, a lot of that stuff
Yeah,
adjusts.
that gets absorbed back up. And I will
Yeah.
verify that to make sure it's all clean and once we get there. So.
okay. If there's no additional changes, I will look for a motion to accept and finalize this as the December 7th. I guess, Tom, I think the December 7th. I know you have the first on there.
Yeah, well, the first was so to keep control as far as what went into this meeting here.
Yep.
So I will update this to December 7th also. I can do that right now.
Right. So is there a motion out there?
I move that we accept.
Oh, you went.
Yes, I made that motion. I'm muted.
All right, is there a second? All right, so the motion is to accept with the changes made and a formal date of December 7th, 2020, the open space plan for the town of Groton. With show of hands, all in favor? All right, passed unanimously, Bruce. On that. Now, the next order of business is the publication of same.
Can I just give us all a hand, especially
Oh,
everybody for
I give you all a hand. It's an amazing document.
listen, it's 2 or 3 years in the making. I think it's too bad we're not together. We can have a drink. Toast, a toast
Have a
to the
drink.
team.
it's almost like I got this anticlimactic thing. I've been doing this for so long.
But you know, it's like, it's 2020. We made it our goal. And that was a very aggressive goal because we were talking about 2021, 2022, and we're like, we hammered this thing out
Oh,
and got it done. And really credit to Tom, who really did a hell of a lot of work, but we did it. It's 2020.
yep. So I do congratulate everybody. That was the objective we set, and damn it, we did it.
Just by the skin of our teeth.
Yay us.
Yeah, yes. There's not a lot of work to do now after this, which I'll get to in a minute. So the order of business then, and I guess it's in the agenda. You want me to share it on the screen, Bruce?
Yeah, sure. Go ahead.
Let's see. There it is. Okay, so I talked with Bruce a little bit, and what we thought we would do is send it to John Burt, the town manager. We talked about having a presentation to him and or the town council, and he agreed that we would do it both at the same time, not do it separately, and do it in first quarter of next year. So in anticipation, that's why it states it in here. So this is the letter that has been proposed. So the new link means that subsequent, now that we have this done, and once Tom does the final acceptance of all the changes, then it's going to be placed in the town website. someplace, because we don't have our own webpage up yet, but someplace it needs to get out there, Bruce. And once that's there, then we could place the link here. So that's what that link means. So it's pretty straightforward. I think you can read it.
Larry, I have a question. Mr.
Yep.
Bray. On the below your link, 1, 2, 3, 4 paragraphs down, if you will. Also note that this document will be updated. That and number 1 and 2, I read it through, and as I was going through, I felt that the document at whatever point is a living document that we will have the ability to update as we move forward. And that just limiting ourselves to expansion of stewardship or just open space legal protection. I think there may be other changes that are in there. And I'm not sure that moving forward, those are the just those two are the only.
Fair statement. So I would change specifically to include, but not
Not limited to.
not limited to, yeah.
Or
That's what I
Larry,
think. Yep.
Larry, just add a number 3 that says, other changes as they become apparent or as needed or additional to the above or something. I don't know.
All right, so what if I did, said initially in 2 areas, and then say additional updates.
What happens if you just said you leave off 1 and 2 and just leave it as also noted that this document will be updated as necessary in the future?
That's what I was thinking. Just get that whole thing out of there.
Take those number 1 and number 2 out, and it doesn't narrow us
All
down.
right, that's a simple. I'm go for simple. I'm working on a word sheet, by the way, on the side. Maybe I should change that. Hold on. Let me stop share there. Screen here. Okay, so I've been editing here as we talked. So I made that change right here.
But now the things
Right.
that were there are gone.
They're gone. You see, that's what you.
Yep.
No, I thought we were putting those 2 things plus additional things.
Well, the next suggestion was not even bother with listing anything.
Yes.
Just say updated. I mean, the cover letter is going to go in the dustbin of history here. And we do have section 7 in our action documentation, which is really going to be addressing the future. So I'm okay with making this as simple as possible. I did copy all the folks that from the agencies and commissions that have provided input at the bottom there. So if you are okay with this letter, I don't think I need a motion. I just need oh, yes, Karen.
Yeah, I just wondered would it be too much to put that, also note that this dynamic document will be updated as necessary, because it is the changes that are coming, especially with climate change, with changes in the community. It's not a static document. It's a dynamic document that will be revised as it's necessary. Or is that too much?
I like it.
Yeah, I think it makes a good point.
Living or dynamic?
Either one.
Dynamic.
Yeah, I like dynamic. That's even more proactive.
That's dynamic. It's a dynamic word. Okay. All right. So I will, Bruce, I will send this to you and we'll wait for Tom's input. We need the link from the IT department. And I'm, in fact, just to do this while I'm going, this is real-time work.
And in real time, as Tom Olson, I have already forwarded you the lockdown December 7th version to both you and Bruce.
Wow, that was quick.
Hey, we're getting it done over here, aren't we?
All right, and
Pandemic done too, as long as we're at it.
beat me. All right, so the cover letter is out. So let me get rid of this. All right, so I stop that. The next item of business in this same vein, because it gets into the outreach program, was a discussion on having a simplified version of the document that might be more readable, et cetera. So Tom and I took a whack at something we call, what do we call it? Abstract?
No, Bridge.
Abridged. So we did a whack at something called the abridged version. My thought is, well, I guess two things. One is I'd like your view that says, should we do it? And if the answer is yes, then I would say send it out. We'll have to send it out for your review and comments so that our next meeting, we can have that discussion rather than, there's a bunch of other things I'd like to get to today on that. So what's your thought on it's like no more than 20-page version of the document? Kristen?
Well, just based on meeting with GCA recently, I'm not sure that they even want 20 pages. I think they're looking for more of an abstract type of thing. So maybe we can have an abridged version, which you've done, but I think they're looking for a 2 to 4 page document. I may be mistaken, but they're pretty adamant that they want it really short. So maybe we could do an abridged and an abstract.
Okay, other comments? Tom?
Well, I just reminded people that the 2-page executive summary was, the intent of that was to provide the very brief, short synopsis of what's in the plan. The abridged version, which I think right now is about 20 pages, is in response to the public request that we received principally through from GCA Slant, the Resilience Task Force and stuff. So I know. So obviously there's some efforts to get a more compact version because they felt that 100 pages was too long. And I understand 100-page things. It's like reading a thesis, and that's what. But as we've said on multiple occasions, both to the town council, and to the RTM, and to the general, in a preamble to the public hearing, and I just reiterate that again for the general public that may be listening in here, is that the intent of is a working document for the commission principally, but also for somebody to come back and really take a look at from a transparency perspective on how what documents are we using to make our decisions and recommendations, whether it's on an economic basis or for grants or recommendations on school properties or whatever the issue is we at least have a firm basis to be making that decision process. And so I felt that's why we've made this thing as big as it has. And so I'm still kind of scratching my head personally as far as who would use this abridged version, as far as where you'd go with it. I don't see a need from the commission perspective, but I just that's my 2 cents. Thanks.
Michelle?
So yes, this is Michelle Fitzpatrick. I had kind of the same question. I know people think there should be a short version, but my question was, what's the purpose? Because what should be in it and how big it should be depends on who it's for and what they're going to do with it. So, if you just want a shorter version for the general public, then you do need more than just the abstract because you want at least enough detail in there for it to make sense. But really, who is the audience of this abridged version?
Karen?
As someone who has only read this 2.5 times, I haven't lived with it the way all of you have. I thought a lot about that person's comment about not wanting it to be more than 20 pages. And one of the things that I wondered is you need, like Tom said, there is a purpose to that whole document, but what if you took the major areas and did a summary like I think you've done and then the link to that particular section so that the document remains whole, but you give them a little bit of each of them. I don't know. I don't think a lot of people are going to read 100 pages. I agree with what the person said, but on the other hand, this is a plan to implement. So that's my 2 cents.
Kristen?
Yeah, it's Kristen again. I think what we did link all the all the headings of the sections to, you would link right to that section, like in the beginning when you had the table of contents, it all links to the section. I think what I think Zell in particular was talking about was working with the other commissions. If you want the other people that we're going to be working with in other capacities to look at it, that they're probably not going to read the whole thing. So maybe the 20-page summary is perfect because we have the executive summary with links to the main document. You have the abridged version. It seems like if a section in the abridged version is maybe a half a page or a page, I think anybody could get through that. So maybe that'll fill the bill.
All right, Larry, all right, Bray.
I just add to what Kristen was saying. I think when you make up this version, and as everybody's been saying, what is our audience for this? If you were to have pictures in it to support it, when we were doing that presentation, there was a while back, there were nice woodsy pictures and so forth, that if you could sort of soften the approach on the document. So if you're trying to take 100 pages, crunch it down to 20, I could see where all 20 pages are full of text. And is that going to be in itself another roadblock? But if you have within that illustrations of what we're talking about, watersheds or protecting ponds, and then birds and plants and that sort of thing mixed in with it, if that would be a more acceptable document to those that are out there. Just a thought.
All right, Ann, did you have your hand up?
I did.
Okay.
I think the way that it is now with the 24 page abridged version, I actually haven't had a chance to read through it yet since I'm catching up on everything. But that seems like a good way to go. As far as I could tell, it did look like there were links. I think Karen, you mentioned this, that went to the rest of the document if people were interested. So I could imagine that that a particular commission may only be interested in one section or a few of those sections, instead of having to go through the whole document. If it were summarized and had links to the full document, I think that could be really helpful. So I'm supportive of an abridged version, and 24 pages seem reasonable.
All right, Larry, let me give you a little different slant, perhaps. So coming up, I'm going to talk about our outreach program, which is GMTV and videos, and I'll show you the page that's been set up, not public yet. And then I'll show you the website that we're working with the IT department on. So it occurred to me that we could structure the website and have sections of the plan, as you said, like, you know, oriented towards specific commissions or some of the topics. Take whether it's the abridged, you know, sections of the abridged version or the other one, and put it there, and then we could soften it, you know, adding the pictures or the videos, and make this the more online piece versus another document, which is, then you think about how you're going to get, excuse me, how are you going to get the document out to people? So let me suggest that I go through those other two mechanisms first, then come back and talk about it holistically, about how to get this out there. So if that's okay with you guys, I'd like to share the website first. Get rid of that. So, oh, I didn't mean the website. I actually meant the, Let me see where that is. Share screen. And I'm looking for that. Get rid of that. I have too many things up. Where did it go? Oh, there it is. It's down there in the corner. What I need to do is, in order for this to work, hold on a second. I got to stop that. I've got to share my computer sound, then share that. All right. So this is the YouTube page that's under the Groton Municipal TV system. So if you type in, we have the Conservation Commission minutes. So in other words, what we're saying now is out there, right? And is in there in a list. Each month or each meeting is in there. It's there. There'd be another one that has a link to this sub channel, if you will. And what we did here is I took kind of that front end page that we talked about. And I put in here, these are the value statements, if you will. And the intent was for each one of these bulleted items is to have a video that promotes it and makes it in a simple way. So this is the first time I've tried it here. So let's see if this works. I don't know how much you can see.
It's the
In
far
March
right.
2020, cities and towns all across the United States
Is that okay?
shut down due to
Yes.
COVID-19. Many of the residual effects of the shutdown were felt deeply throughout the world and hit the United States economy, where millions of households have been affected. While schools, offices, stores, and businesses shut down, there was and continues to be worry amongst many of our citizens, including right here in Groton, Connecticut. With all of this uncertainty, the one refuge that has remained unchanged, even in a global pandemic, is the value of Groton's open spaces. Human health benefits of living in close proximity to green and open spaces with public access have proven to improve physical and mental health, strengthens cardiovascular health, and reduces anxiety.
I think that having open spaces has a huge impact for mental health, just in general. Speaking to my family alone, my husband suffers from some mental health issues based on being a veteran. And so for us, getting outdoors is huge. In fact, he started trail running this year as a result of being, at first we were stuck inside, and then we realized we had an opportunity to do something that we hadn't done before, and that was step outside.
While our brains are becoming more accustomed to constant activity, the rest and care our minds and bodies deserve and require is always close by. The value, peace, and calm that open space can bring to enrich your balance and emotional mental health is always here. We know that in today's world, when cutting-edge technology and digital entertainment rule the attention of our children and young adults, that family fun often translates to financial investment for even the smallest of outings. Here in our open spaces, you can not only breathe and take time out from the uncertainty and stress, but the experience is also completely free.
While the pandemic is happening, it's created this unbelievable experience for our family to come together because of the outdoors and that open space, which we didn't have before.
Take a walk with your family. Get to know our acres of lush trails and bustling wildlife, or any of our other endless options. The Groton Conservation Commission recognizes the impact of social distancing that COVID-19 has had on all of our lives, and wants to remind you that even at a time when we must remain 6 feet apart, that open space is waiting for you, just outside.
All right. So that was the first one, and I have to, Becky Charleston did a lot of work, and I've learned all about how copyright laws work because Sean Greeley, who's on the staff that supported it, put her through the ringer, and she had an answer to every frame in there has to be supported that we have a right to use on. So she did do a lot of work with that. So that's one aspect of it. The other aspect, and let me stop sharing here. The other aspect is screen share and so let me get rid of that. Let me bring this over here. So I've been working with the IT department. This new website, all this stuff on top, was just come out, I think, less than 2 weeks ago with what we talked about at just before the meeting, with a whole new thing. So we kind of had to wait for them to get that up and running. And but we've got an agreement. We've got agreement from the town manager to have a website for us, and you'll see it'd be home, government, boards and commission, conservation commission. Right, so that's how that's going to be. And when you look at now the exact format, since we give it to them, I'll show you how we give it to them in a second. So what we need to do, let me do a different share. And all right, so the way that we provide input to them is this, right? So as I mentioned, government, boards and commission, here's what's there. So we're kind of slotted in here, and this stuff gets translated into the web page, but it all has PDFs, links, or other information. So we provide the content and we provide the indexing this way, and then we'll go back and forth and we can add pretty pictures and everything else to it. So my thought was, getting back to the earlier conversation, is that under conservation plan, for example, if we go over here and then either do sections or do abstract or overview or whatever, we can kind of put things in there that would maybe make it a little simpler, but not, or even put a link to the right section of it, but not have to craft all new stuff. So that was kind of how I wanted to link that in. So let me throw that open for discussion, if you will. Tom, you're on mute.
I'm off mute now, and this is Tom Olson. I kind of like that idea. It seems much more. I mean, after taking a look at what you've got on the GMTV, and then tying this with the the conservation portion of the website, I think you'd be breaking your. As long as we keep it under 20 items, we'll be fine.
All right. Other comments?
I have a question, Bray.
Yep.
On the video that you just showed, which was nice, the woman that was being interviewed was standing next to a fence. Is that on one of our properties?
It's GOSA.
Oh, it's a GOSA property.
It's a GOSA property. Yep.
Okay.
Just inside the town line. The GOSA property it's in Ledyard, and half in Ledyard and half in Groton.
Okay.
So that's where she happened to be. I did kind of say, well, next time we'll pick a more 100% in the town, but that's GOSA property in the town of Groton. Yeah.
Or something that she's standing next to an entrance sign, for instance, or something like that, where when you talk, when I was thinking about it, I wasn't familiar with that particular piece of property and that particular spot. And thinking, okay, she's talking in front of generic, she could be out in Massachusetts or somewhere filming this. But because there's nothing that says, said such property, you know, next to her, for instance, a designation for people to go to.
Yeah, that wasn't, yeah, the intent, that wasn't the intent. I mean, we'll get to the trails book in a second, but it really was the value, and it's any of the open space properties. So it wasn't oriented towards a specific property.
No,
I
I wasn't,
think, yep.
but something that said Groton on it, you know, for instance, and it's not, you know, because we're trying to get people interested in, or thinking of our open spaces within the town. That's all.
Larry,
Yep.
I'm sorry, that just gave me an idea for another little video we could do, which is just a little tour of specific open spaces and some of the highlights. That'd be a fun little project. We should talk to Becky about that.
Yes, I think yeah, that's kind of the subcommittee,
Mhm.
you know, to kind of work on that stuff. So the other thing I guess I want to add to it is I lined up, actually I met this individual walking in open spaces over the years, and he's a photographer, and he takes just these exceptional pictures of flora, fauna, and he does, you know, landscapes, etc. So I kind of signed him up to be a photographer for us, so we can use his portfolio of pictures and kind of sprinkle them in. I think earlier we talked about making it, you know, adding pictures to it. So these are, I mean, he's got a professional eye, even though it's a hobby. They really are kind of professional ones. I thought I had it teed up, and now I can't find the damn thing that I was going to share with you. 2 or 3.
What's his name, Larry?
Smith, Randy Smith. Yep.
It's Avalonia's got a photographer too that's really good. He lives in Stonington.
I'll just take one quick. Oh darn! So I can't find it. All right. Anyway, they're really neat pictures, like really up close stuff, and then some really distant stuff. All right, so let's cycle back to the question on the table, which is, I view this short and abstract as part of our outreach program. So let me frame it that way. And Tom, I think you indicated that maybe it could be parsed up in one of these venues, or?
I will take an action to, now that I understand this, I really appreciate this outline and stuff here, because I had not known where you guys were going as far as for the outreach subcommittee here. This really helps a lot. You know, if you could provide us this outline as a starting point, that I could then, I will gladly work to parse up the sections of the plan that would support this, you know, focusing in on these type of areas and stuff, and then to help put things together as far as on what would be appropriate sections to load into each of the different parts. Some of the stuff is applicable. I don't know if we need to have the whole 100 pages loaded per se, but you know, as far as when we get down to the high points that we're looking for in the plan, to have an understanding of what's in the different sections and what we're doing with it. I can work to now that I understand where you're going with this, it makes it a lot easier. Rather than
that's a good thought, Tom. I mean, you could almost structure it and put the structure in this, and that we can get it out there, and then add, like I said, pictures, links to the video, you know, the values video segments as well. Kristen, do you have your hand up?
Yeah, I was just going to say we certainly want to have the link to the entire document, Because this is
Yes.
where someone's gonna go to find it, but then have a separate link that's just like a more of a shortened version or a convenient version or something like that. Is that what?
Oh, yeah, that, matter of fact, link to open space plan. On that video page, I had that introduction, but I didn't have a link in there, so you just reminded me, so I'll make sure there's a link on the video page to the open space plan at the bottom, right, at the bottom of that text screen. So Bruce, as soon as that link's available, I can send it to Sean and he can add it to that page at the bottom. So we'll just kind of sprinkle the link around. All right. So we'll continue to work on that. I would like to have another outreach subcommittee meeting sometime this week or late this week or next week. I'll reach out to you guys and set that up. But I think we've got a framework. We actually have live, at least the video that is live, and we've got the right structure and contacts to convert the web page to it. And I think I need to call him up to see what he's done with this input, because I did send this input to him, figuring he can kind of start to work on it and go from there. So I think let me make a comment that Tom to look at adding segments to the web. Okay. Let's see, the GMTV, the website proposal. All right, the next item in the outreach portion of this is a trail booklet. Let me stop sharing here. So Bray, any updates on that?
Yes, I contacted Parks and Rec, and I was told that I need to start attending the Trails Task Force meetings again, because right now that is where there has been some very active discussions amongst a variety of different entities that are part of the Trails Force Task Force, and it's an active discussion there. And so we have a meeting coming up, I believe, at the end of this week that I'm going to attend and see where we are. So it's moving ahead. It's just I was directed to see what the Trails Force Task Force is doing.
I know what you're going to say, Michelle. So
Maybe
go ahead.
you do it, maybe you don't.
Okay.
I was going to suggest that Ray take back the position of being our rep on the Trails Task Force.
I can do that.
Because part of the reason that you turned it over is because you were chair, but you're not
Right.
chair anymore, so you may as well go back to being the rep.
Sure. Sure.
I thought you were going to tell me, Michelle, that the task force they reviewed stuff, but they didn't actually create stuff. So,
Well, maybe Ray can get them to create something.
because that was why we kind of said that wasn't going to work, and that's why, Bray, we started talking about, well, all right, what are we going to do? So kind of like I feel we're
Well,
going into
maybe,
a
you
little
know,
loop.
I mean, basically the group would do something if somebody on the group does it. So maybe this is the way to get them to do that, is to
Okay.
take the lead on it. So
I mean, that'd be fine. That I think we defaulted, or my view is default, because they weren't doing something, right? So if Bray can whip them into shape, yes.
Well, also, if a booklet is being formed, it sounds like it's a physical entity. And therefore, somebody within the town, we would need to go to make this all come together. And when the supply gets low, that it gets republished, that sort of thing. And Parks and Rec is in a good position to be the go-to person for this. They are looking for input, helping the format, I believe at this point. But I'm looking ahead to say, well, at some point, we're gonna have to go to somebody to say, here's the booklet, and we'd like to have it published so it can go out to public.
Yeah. When I talked to Mark Berry on that very point, we kind of cycled back to having it electronic and on the town website and having printing capability at the library if somebody wanted to get a hard copy if they didn't have their own home printer versus having, a box of
Right.
booklets, right? I mean, so then we kind of went both ways, said, do we want to spend the money? Don't we want to spend the money? Did we want to sell it? It was like, we provided electronically and the town would provide printouts for folks if they requested it. Might be the shortest way, but I would leave it to you and the Trails Committee to kind of get to that point. But I did have that, just to let you know, I did have that discussion with Mark.
Sure.
All right, other comments on that? Yes, Ann. I can't hear you.
Yeah, I'm sorry. So I guess I'm wondering, isn't there already a way to print out all of the trails that are in the town of Groton? I think last time I was even from the GIS.
If you go to the town of Groton website, you'll get town-owned properties. Then you go to the GOSA website, and they all look. And then you go to each of the individual places, and they all are a little bit different. Some of the trails aren't fully there. So the thought was there is a lot of information. It's just not together, right? And as the town, since we're supporting the total town, not just town-owned properties, that we'd like to get something, because I've went to look for things and going, where is this stuff, right? So we want to make it easy for people to find things and also add stuff to make it a little bit more complete documentation of the trails.
I do. I completely agree with you that we should make it easy and to find. Another comment I was going to make is that it seems like every time I went into the town of Groton website, not in the new one, so maybe it's a lot better than it was, but I would get to a different area and maps were actually quite different in different areas. And I don't know if anyone else has experienced that, and I think some of them were actually not even correct, or it was very hard to make sense of some of them. So maybe they were outdated and hadn't been taken off of the website.
Yes.
Great. If I can find that, I'll send it to you if that's helpful, or to Michelle or whoever.
Yeah, part of what Mark Berry agreed to was what's a standard for a trail map. So that we can, that you go to a map and you kind of know what the heck it is, right?
Yeah.
Right. Where a trail was. So that was part of it.
Well, I think on the
Kristen,
GIS,
I'm sorry.
On the GIS site, I'd have to check, but I'm pretty sure they had the GOSA ones up there, as well as Avalonia, as well as the town of Groton. And they're all printable, and they come in 2 different formats, which I don't remember right off the top of my head.
This is Tom Olson. I have it queued up. If I could share it right now for you.
Okay.
So this is the map I'm on the Groton website, town of Groton website. And these are the trails that are listed at this time. Obviously you got Pequot Woods, but you don't have this is the stuff on the Candlewood Hill. This is Candlewood Ridge with GOSA. There's lots of trails here that people are using that are not listed. You do have the COP. This is the sheep farm. This is the COP property and Bluff Point down here. So there are some trails listed on here, but I would not say it's fully complete. And it just lists these ones down along the side here. So
Tom, is this the new website?
Yes, this is but it's through the GIS portal that you get to it. You don't know it, because if you go to Parks and Rec, it says Parks and Trails, and there's nothing to get you over to here. You have to know that it's still on the GIS website.
So on the right-hand side, you see all of these.
These are the ones that are listed that you'll see as for each of the different properties.
But I think you can click on somewhere there on layers and get maps and print them. And for each individual trail.
Yeah.
Because I'm pretty sure that's what we did.
Yeah. So you can get, there's very,
That's not what it looks different. So let me see if I was looking at something else.
but these are the ones that are print, like this BB Pond, this trail, this map right here is what's printed and posted within BB Pond today. And likewise for, I've hiked this multiple times here, and that's exactly what's posted and printed at the trail.
Okay, yep, I agree. That one looks accurate.
Yep. All right. So yeah, getting people to it. So even a link to that from, the Conservation Commission page would be helpful. So the more links, the better, as far as I'm concerned. Kristen.
Yeah, Kristen, sorry. I was gonna say, just a link to that alone would be really helpful, but I have spoken with people in the public, and people really would like to have just a nice map, town of Groton, the whole town on one side, showing all the different open spaces, and you can have the highways and how to get to, like just a real map showing all the open spaces, and then the other side having little like section maps of each property with the trails of the property. Because then people are still, a lot of people are digital, but sometimes you're out there and you're not by a cell tower. You're not actually able to access a map. You're out there and you're like, gee, where am I? I think this is something that a tactile thing that would still be of value.
Well, thus we call it a booklet. So
Yeah, I'm not thinking of a booklet. I'm thinking of a proper map that actually opens, like a
well,
real.
but it opens. You don't want to get it too big, a big folding thing. I think it was a trifold. But yes, Bray.
The Groton Town Trails Task Force has been going on for a number of years. And I just want to give the task force the credit for the maps that we have now. The Parks and Rec Department is looking for direction on what we would want on a map. And this is sort of where we are at the moment. So it's not perfect. I know on some particular pieces of property, the trails, not all the trails that are on that property are listed on the map. So it gets a little confusing that if you get out there, you're hiking and you see a different color and you want to take it and say, well, I'll look at the map that I ran off. There's nothing there. So how come it's marked? And there's, for instance, I just noticed today, just thinking about it, when Tom put up the map, Peace Sanctuary, for instance, isn't on there. And that's relatively open to the public also on River Road in Mystic. So it's a work in progress. And I think we've come a long way, and GOSA and Avalonia, Conservation Commission have all put in their input into this thing. And then it's been to actually do the groundwork to put it together has gone on through the Parks Department to the town. And so this is sort of where we are. And you have all very good comments about where we are and what your expectations are. And we're not at, it's not like an AMC trail map yet. We're not there, climbing the White Mountains, the level of detail. So hopefully at some point we're trying to get improvements here.
All right, we'll leave that in Bray's capable hands. We'll do a little interlude. So these I mentioned the pictures, so I did find them. So I thought that was pretty neat for that one. And
Beautiful
then
pictures, really nice.
Oh, wow.
One of my favorites.
That's not here though, right?
Yep, that's all Groton open spaces.
Wow, cool.
So that's what I'm saying is that, so I kind of grabbed him and said, you're gonna, so he has agreed. He is now our official photographer. So we've got a
Nice.
So that was neat. That's why I was kind of impressed with some of his shots. Brian wants to use some of the pictures on the Groton Town website. So he's going to give some to him separate from the Conservation Commission. All right, next topic on the agenda, open space stewardship workbook, and then the open space ordinance. And I think I could turn this over to Tom and take a breather here.
Well, as far as on the workbook, I haven't, because I've been kind of focused on getting the finalized of the plan, I haven't done anything in the past few weeks on it, but it was included in your package, I noted today. As far as the, I think it's after the, we had the ordinance and then the open space workbook is in there. As I mentioned, it's still in a very draft version. I've taken things and I'm standing by for inputs. What was envisioned is that this would be kind of would be a document for the commission, not necessarily published and going through the whole public hearing portion of it. But one of the things, and one of the reasons that I've kind of held back going forward with the stewardship things is, in my viewpoint, the driving factor in here is that in regard to what we're doing with stewardship, and that goes back, in my viewpoint, to the ordinance. To me, the ordinance would be clearly managing what is in a stewardship plan for individual properties. And that's how come I haven't gone very much in here until we actually come through where are we at with the ordinance, and then how does that tie in to the stewardship plans. If we decide not to go forward with an ordinance, then I think that we put ourselves into a role that the stewardship workbook would become much more important relative to making a determination of what we're going to steward. Because I think that's before I can go very much farther, we can have good a workbook to work with, because stewardship of land is a fairly well-known objective. It's set up by the Land Trust Alliance on a national basis. Both Avalonia and GOSA have used this that format in developing their stewardship plans for their individual properties within Groton here. Those stewardship plans are available, and we come down to what would us as the Conservation Commission be taking on for stewardship. One thing else in parallel with this is I noted that it's a decision between, is a open space property belong to the Parks and Recs Commission, or does it belong to just the general town, or does it belong to us? And as there's things that we have not been doing over the past years to be watching out and stewarding individual properties, and do we really want to take that on as a responsibility? I'll give you one lesson that I've, in my, recently I became on the board of the Tri-Town Trail. And I've been dealing a lot with the Conservation Commission from Ledyard. And they actually own some of the trails that are not part of the Parks and Recs area. And they're out there stewarding out in the woods, blazing trails, putting bog bridges in, walking the boundaries, all this type of stuff as a commission member responsibility. And none of us have been doing that ever that I'm aware of here on properties that we would now like to worry about. And so I kind of caution us, is this really what we want to be getting involved in here as we start to think about what do I want to have in a workbook, and what responsibilities am I taking on as a commissioner here? Because you're talking about growth as far as what our responsibilities and our duties are. And so I think we have to be very, very kind of careful on a long-term basis as far as what we're buying into here. So that's one of the things that I said, was to get a clear definition of what are the different properties within the town. That's where we start with. Michelle did a great job of putting the index together, and the rest of the data team, the parcel team, of getting us a good inventory. But I think we need to kind of add on to that inventory listing who owns the property and who's responsible for the stewardship today. and a lot of the properties we have that are, if you go into the Parks and Rec master plan, I recognize that it's being updated right now, but in the current version, it had a fairly good, healthy list of parks that the Parks and Recs Commission and the Parks Department is stewarding on a daily basis. I mean, I go to my next door neighbor here in the Crosswinds open space, and Parks and Rec's out there all the time, mowing it and keeping it nice and pristine. And we call up Parks and Rec, oh, you did this or whatever, and they are very responsive. And I don't know if we want to get involved into other areas, but I take a look at, there's a number of properties that are fairly large, as well as we're down to these 0.1 acres also, as far as do I want to get involved in that? Because it depends on how you draw the line as far as on if something isn't assigned to another department. And that's where you get a lot of these vacant properties. You don't want to be sucking those in, and I don't think any of us want to start going around monitoring vacant properties as open space. So it's a matter of kind of getting a clear definition of something we need to think about in regard to where we want to be going. And that's come from my viewpoint was, let's get the open space ordinance flushed out and have the necessary definitions in that. And then we can be taking a look at what do we as the commission responsibilities are going to absorb. And one of the things that the way that the ordinance was drafted up was to be leveraging highly on the Parks and Recs folks as far as for putting those maintenance plans together and doing the necessary stewarding of those. Not to say that we couldn't be supporting those under the volunteer umbrella. If you go back, remember in section 6 of the plan, we talked about developing a stewardship volunteer organization to assist in taking a look at these open space and stewarding those. So from our viewpoint, we need to also take that into consideration here as far as on developing a workbook to how we're going to coordinate that volunteer effort once we just make decisions. So it's kind of a step-by-step process here as far as for the stewardship notebook, workbook, and as far as on where we're going. So I just throw all that out. I know it's a lot. But at this point, I'd say let's talk about the ordinance as the key item next. Thank you.
Thanks, Tom. So if I get the order right, the ordinance, the analysis of who owns what or who is actually has stewardship coverage, which means something doesn't, then based upon that, determine the level of involvement we have, perhaps a workbook, and the ability as part of that workbook to include community organizations. As an aside, there are a couple of those already starting on the King property, and they're trying to get one started for the Ledyard property. I'll get to that as new business. So I think that all fits together. So I guess do we want to spend some time now, Tom, to go through because you've updated the space ordinance document? Do you want to spend some time now?
Based on, I can, if you want me to bring up the ordinance document, I can here.
Yeah, it's like 6 pages, so it's not huge.
Yeah. This is the ordinance item. And this has all the comments we had a special meeting back in September. I took all those comments, put those in here, and then we also received additional comments through the public hearing process. There was, if you notice, Mr. Furlong and Mr. Walker, Zell brought up issues in regard to that. So all the stuff in here is what the comments. And my one comment here is for the open space definitions, what they kind of focused in on to delete the town council. That was the one additional area that was added from the public comments that we've received as they've been reviewing this. And then everything else is what we discussed at our last meeting. So at this point, it's still very structured after what the original scope came from Cheshire. So I knew that that was the reason I went with that focus, as I've mentioned before, was that it's obviously gone through necessary legal reviews and stuff. But one of the things that we do in here is that we talk about these management plans. It's outlines of stewardship as well as the permitted and our uses, if any, for each open space parcel has been approved by the town commission. So what I'm going to do here is shift this out of the this mode here, so it's, you don't see the red anymore, so it's a little bit easier to read. Put this into no markup, then go back up here, and let's get this into a single view. Okay, so we can go in here. This is what the management plan would look like. This is a key area. Then we have definitions for minors, motor vehicles, land space, passive recreations, permitted items, persons, programs, stewards, and town meeting, town of Groton. We talked about the administration to be an open space land steward. That's essentially a new position that we'd be establishing, and it's going to be appointed by the Parks Director of Parks and Recreation with approval of town manager and the Conservation Commission. Whether this is a paid position or a volunteer position would be at the discretion. The steward be qualified by education, experience from administration, and that the steward be under the direction and control of the Parks and Recs director. And so, in the absence of steward, the director may appoint an acting steward to approve the permits that are required further on down. And then this is the dedication of the use. So we'll have the particular open space plans not previously assigned to a specific town department should be determined by a designation of the Conservation Commission, adoption of a management plan, partial approved by the Conservation Commission. So what this does, it basically allows us as a commission to have a somewhat of authority as far as where the dividing line is between what's a valuable open space that we need to be stewards of, and what can we just let sit there as it has been in the past as a vacant lot that's town property. And not worrying about putting the dedication and effort into some of these smaller properties that the town has usage of, or that we want to control as open space. So that's one thing that we would, that's where the open space ordinance would be controlling that and giving us that authority to some degree. Okay. And then we talked about getting the legal and opinions in here, the maintaining of the management plans, and then talk about the management include the following: the general descriptions, properties, goals, minimum stewardship, permitted uses, prohibited uses, if any, and terms and conditions of each use and the special considerations. And then before the Parks and Rec proposes a management plan or an amendment to the plan, we should first submit the plan or any objects to the Conservation Commission and to the Parks and Rec Commission for our reviews, and then within 45 days, and then they would be going to, and also to the town attorney. So make sure that these things are legally correct, because they've got prohibitions in them and stuff, is why we would have the legal aspects of it. And these go into all the individual regulations that we went through last time. I'm not going to go too much because we really didn't change much in this area in regard, but this will at least have an expansion to what you have today. Because right now, there's very little that is prohibited on an open space land. And that's why we're suggesting to put those regulations codify those into an ordinance, so that we have a better structure as far as on what's allowed and what's not allowed on this open space properties. And that's why, because of the size of it, you want to be able to kind of control that. And why we as a commission are worrying about the long-term sustainability of these properties, because of the wildlife and the habitat that's on the property. So that's why there's a laundry list of things in here that we've gone through, and it goes all the way through free roaming dogs and the recklessness of the and stuff. Right now, going through the town prohibits things such as ATVs and stuff throughout the whole town. But I think this would be just reiterate some of these things and everything as far as on the use. So even we get to some extreme stuff with the parasail and parachutes and stuff. Then there's a permitting process that would be managed by the Parks and Recs steward. As far as on what you want to do, if you want to get an exception, this provides a mechanism to go do that. and then we've got the property damage and personal liability clauses, and then minors and first control those, and then enforcement that the steward would then get the town police to enforce the and then use the standard penalty issues off the Chart A for the Superior Court. So this is all pretty much standardized right now. I kind of like the idea of getting this going and having the control. Not that we as the Conservation Commission would be having a much more of an active role. We would continue in the type of role that we have today, but we would be relying on the Parks Department to be kind of our steward and to basically expanding their area of responsibilities from just the parks, which is a majority of the land area that's in our open space considerations, but to get these other areas that are still viable open space areas under some type of control and regulation. So that's kind of an overview of what I've got in the draft ordinance. And I think our next step would be to have the staff review this, and then I think it's ready to send over to the staff for their review and forwarding on through the normal ordinance process.
Comments? Right?
I want to thank Tom for all the work, but he brought up early on in his discussion about stewardship versus the ordinance. And if we are stewards of open space, we're stewards of all open space. And knowing, having spent a little bit of time with Avalonia, any and all property they have some stewardship on it. They even have pieces of property that they'd love to sell and help to do some fundraising for getting other properties that are higher value. But having said that, with this ordinance, boy, it gives us a lot of power to the Conservation Commission. And are we ready to take it on? I've watched other towns like Ledyard and Stonington in their Conservation Commission have more of a involvement beyond just advisory, but actually taking responsibility for varieties of things. And sometimes that controls what the Conservation Commission can do, or what the folks that are members, the volunteers that are on it, it then controls where you go. So if you have this very involved ordinance first, and you get that in place, then all of a sudden we've got to look at all of these properties and other things that the Conservation Commission looks into, like plastics and the environment and so forth. That's all going to take a very second, third, tertiary down the list. So I think that making an opinion about the stewardship, what our expectations are first, and then coming back and making up an ordinance that supports that, so that it has some teeth to it to move forward. That's my position.
All right, I believe, Tom, it says the steward shall be appointed by the Department of Recs and Recreation.
That's correct.
That we're kind of in an oversight position to make sure that there exists a management plan, not necessarily be the steward, be the actual steward of it. Michelle?
Yeah, this is Michelle Fitzpatrick. I think Ray makes a really good point. And I also agree, Tom's logic of how this is going to go. but I really think we need to have a bigger discussion about what we really want to do as a commission going forward in terms of stewardship, because I agree, if we decide that we want to start acting at all like the Avalonia and Gosa in terms of stewarding our properties, that I didn't sign up for this commission to do that, and we'd end up spending so much time with that we wouldn't really have the time for the stuff we want to do. So we really, I think I agree, and maybe, you know, if there's enough people on the commission that want to do that, that's great. But I think we need to agree as a group what level of stewardship we really intend to do as a commission, and make sure that this document somewhat reflects that intention.
Kristen?
Yeah, I agree with Michelle. I think we're sort of more maybe providing some guidance, but not necessarily the physical labor or whatever it might be, except for on a volunteer basis. You know, if you want to go out on a Saturday with a little crew of people to take out invasives, that's one thing. But I don't think we have the capability to take on the responsibility of all this stewardship. I think it has to be parsed out.
I think we're getting off track, because I didn't read anywhere in here that we did. It was only that there shall be a steward owned by the Parks and Rec Department. And we're kind of like, it's like the tree warden thing. We're you know, the advisory committee, the oversight.
Yeah, that's what
I mean, Tom, correct me if I'm wrong. That's how I read this. You're on mute, Tom.
I would agree with you that the intent was to keep us in purely an administrative role, and being able to influence the selection of the steward, what his doing, what in development of what his responsibilities are, and once he's taken on the management plans, reviewing those management plans, and then oversight of his, you know, through an administration process of oversight of what he's doing in the stewardship role there. So now, in parallel with this, there could be, from a cost perspective from the town, I think that's one of the things we need to be worried about. Okay, and this is where Parks and Recs, and that's come to some degree. I think we really need to get Parks and Rec on board, both the commission and the staff, with these words as far as the way we've drafted it up at this point. And so that's a comment I'd say, send it for staff review on both the Parks and Rec side as well as our staff with the planning staff to go through that process, because I think it takes both sides.
Michelle?
Right, so yeah, Tom, all of that may be true, but when you started this conversation, you started with saying that this is the first piece of this much bigger process of us becoming stewards and taking care of the property. So that's why I think that's what Ray was responding to. So I was responding to, is you made it sound like this was the first piece of us becoming more active as stewards, actual stewards of taking care of the property.
I would say that what I'm trying to do here is that if you take a look at who's stewarding the properties today, no one. Okay, so by default, is that our responsibility because we haven't been doing something that we should be doing? I guess that's how I would approach it. And so I don't like that solution. Okay, so I'm saying let's get an ordinance in place in here, get this stuff assigned, get these properties assigned to somebody, and that way now I know where I am. Because right now, if it's not in Parks and Rec, it's not in Public Works, who owns it? Somebody could easily say the Conservation Commission owns it because you're tracking it. You put this plan out here, you're tracking them, so obviously you guys own it. All the default stuff that isn't, you know, if it's not, Public Works obviously owns Town Hall, okay? You know, we got Pequod Woods run by the Pequod Woods group. We got Cop property clearly owned by the Parks and Recs people, but you know, you end up over by the Joel property south of Pequod Road there, and you know, across the street from the King property or the Kalinowski property. No one owns that big, 70 acres over there. Okay. It's been lying dormant as a vacant lot for the town for years. Okay. Well, that's my issue. Who owns that?
Yeah, Greg?
In my experience with the town and open space is that the Conservation Commission is the advocate for the town having open space. And there wasn't anybody else really that was looking out any of the other agencies. They all had their own other agendas. Once we acquired them, then the question is about stewardship, and stewardship is becoming much more important now that we have the land, and we are running up against what Tom is making his observations, like with the Joel property, that we've had it for a very long time, but there's no trails on it. There's no active management with it. And the town has limited resources. They have limited budget constraints on how many people they can have and what they can do. The two properties in town that do have a board that oversees that open space, that was set up by the acquisition of the property at the time of the property, that they wanted that particular piece of property to actually have an oversight that's not within the town, but it's volunteers to support the town in managing that property. And so, just as other people have been saying, that depending upon, if you put this ordinance up first, then there's lots of things in here that somebody's going to come back and say, well, the steward's going to have to be a paid position. Nobody's going to volunteer to do the level of going out and walking all the open space properties without help. And one way to get a higher elevation of stewardship on it is to put in trails, because then the Parks and Rec has to go through and help to maintain those trails. That's a nice level of participation by the town to be parts of the stewardship of that. If there's no trails, there doesn't seem to be no one pursuing the concept of putting a trail through there, other than we've had conservation meetings about it. But there's nobody on the conservation team that necessarily in the past, well, we had some people that wanted to go out and mark new trails, but we haven't had people who wanted to go out and make that as their an active participation full time. So again, it goes back to, what do we think about realistically we want to participate in stewardship, and look at what the pool of money is out there for higher levels that Tom is stressing. How's that going to be done with, in the current budget season, moving forward? Because this plan is having the Parks and Rec have someone who's in charge of the stewardship of these properties. In a roundabout way, those properties that are maintained by the town, PB Woods, Pequot Woods, Cobb property, and so forth, they do have some sort of a stewardship go-to person within the ranks of the Parks and Rec maintenance department to do those things. But now we're trying to expand to other properties that right now, as Tom has said, is no one's been doing anything with it, and nor does it seem that there's been any decision not to do anything. So there's no place that you can go to say, well, is the reason that there's no trails on here, that no one seems to be doing anything, is because someone's made a decision, we're going to do it that way for the following reasons. That's not out there either. So I think before this ordinance, the ordinance, I think, I agree with Tom, should start to go out to Parks and Rec, should start to go out to the planning department and so forth, to take a look at this thing, because there are lots of things in here that are boilerplate about can you pack a gun in wherever you go in the open space? No, you can't have a gun whatsoever. And it just seems like there's more and more people in your face now that think that they should have, if I have a permit to carry a gun, that I should be able to carry it anywhere. And who's going to police all that? So, and a lot of the stuff that's here, that's in this list, I don't know if someplace, I don't know where you can go within the Parks Department and see what can you do and what can't you do. Other than if you go to a piece of property and you see a board, signboard up, and here's some of the few of the things you can and can't do. Of course, and the other problem is that who's going to police all this all the time? So I think that what is the level of stewardship that we're looking for would be first and foremost, and then form the ordinance around that to put structure to it.
Other comments? All right. I think there's two courses of action that we should consider. One is we were approached by Parks and Rec that says for them to take the next step in, I can't remember the exact state certification, they actually had to have an ordinance for open space. So we sent them, or Tom sent them the original one from was it Cheshire, the other town, and I got to thank you for it. So I think it's probably appropriate to see where they're at. I mean, so if in fact the town is considering this as part of Parks and Recs, as part of the development, then because hey, we did some editing on this. I think the only place that the Conservation Commission is mentioned is in an oversight capacity, which as you go through the process, might get struck because the town, the planning department wants to do it themselves, which would be, I wouldn't have an objection to that. So if there's not an objection, I would propose that I reach out to the planning department and Parks and Rec and say, hey guys, this has been requested by Parks and Rec. I'll reach out to him first, and let's get some feedback as to what the sense is of it. I'll worry about cost later, because that always comes up, and it'll come out in the wash, and it may or may not be a major item depending on what else happens in the budget. And there's also the option of having community organizations, et cetera, volunteer for certain specific properties, which would take some of that cost off the table. So that's one thing. The other one, which really gets into one of the action items we had, and Tom mentioned earlier, is to go through the list of open space items or open space parcels and say, number one, are they in fact protected? Do they have easements, not easements? Number two, is there somebody that is aligned with has any stewardship obligation for that property? So you get a bunch that says, here's a total that are owned, here's the ones that are protected, here's the ones that are covered. Now at least we know what the open spaces, what the open items are. And that allows us to kind of come back and see the scope of work that's there. So I think, to me, there's those two action items. And I think one is, I'll take the one of getting to the planning and Parks and Rec. But I think the the parcel or the data aspect, in terms of starting to do some work. I know part of this is getting access to the records, Bruce, to actually track some of this stuff down. And that's something that I think, Karen's new to the group. So that, adding you, I'm looking at some realignment here. So Michelle, would you and Karen be willing to kind of take the partial list we have and start to chip away at those two questions?
The questions being, what's
Yep.
in the lease on it?
Yep. And then the second one, is there an assigned steward of some form, whether it's a committee or something else?
Yeah, I can work on that starting in January.
Okay.
Yeah, it sounds like you're trying to retool the parcel team. I didn't know if one of the reasons Michelle was on the parcel team was because of the GIS type of interfacing. I don't know if that's kind of wrapped up now, and what you want to do with the text team, because going into these records and that kind of stuff, I'm more than willing to help support that, because I don't see the text team rolling in to do very much right now, unless because there's the document's done. In regard to how we want to break up between Ann, myself, and Kristen. I know Kristen's already gotten sucked into the web outreach stuff, which is great.
Well, there's a crossover on that because we're going to be extracting stuff that the text team created, I think, to use there. I mean, given what we discussed today. So I think there's a couple of things. So, if you and Karen and Michelle would look at that angle of it, and Kristen, UI, and we had Becky plus Jessica. And were you? Let's see. Were you in on that, Ann? I'm trying to remember now. I'm losing my thread.
Ann wasn't, I don't think.
Ann wasn't. Yeah. To go down that path, then we kind of have to cycle back and see where we're at. From the GIS data, I've got another angle I'm pursuing. I reviewed it with Michelle, and I'll share that with you under the report of chair, that we may have a way of getting some GIS resources, or at least address that. And if that occurs, then that would free up, the historic parcel team to kind of work on this, which I think is probably the more important thing right now. Anywho. So I would say, if you guys are willing, is to kind of divide it that way. So let me, whoops.
Karen, do you have any idea what we're talking about?
Vaguely. I'm looking forward to talking to you and Tom, so I can just ask questions and not take up everybody's time.
We put together this list of the property we own, and it's in the appendix in the document.
Yep, I've read.
I have the living spreadsheet, and basically it still needs some cleanup, and we know that, and Tom could probably go to the spreadsheet and tell me what that is, but basically, now that we have that list, we need to get more information about the properties on the list. And on the town website, the GIS site, you can go in and get the actual deed of the property. So my understanding is that this is going to take actually going into each of those website, each of those properties, and reading through those documents that are online about the property. But
Okay.
yeah, I think so did I hear you volunteering for this subcommittee or not? I wasn't sure.
Yes,
Okay.
I'm also volunteering.
Okay. So the three of us then that'd be the first discussion, be exactly what's our plan to go through this and to start digging into that information. But we can discuss and we can share with you what's been done so far, because I know you have an idea based on the discussions. We can go a little deeper on where that list came from, how I put it together, and try to get an understanding of what this is about, because basically that's the properties that we understand are open space in the town of Groton.
Okay, yeah, that would be very helpful. Thank you. I would like that.
All right. So Kristen, do you want to suck Ann into the outreach subcommittee?
It's up to Anne, you know, when I'm going to be all in pollinator pathways soon, and maybe Anne's more interested in that. It's totally up to her. I'm not going to suck anybody in.
Yeah, I'm more than happy to help where you need it. Obviously, I think we can't work in groups bigger than 3. Is that
Three,
right?
yep, that's it, 3, yep.
So,
3 commission members, you could have other people on them though.
right.
Yes, and we do, like I said, is that the Becky and I guess Randy and Jessica. Right,
Yeah, no,
would be
that's
3
fine.
more for that.
I can
All
help.
right,
Yep.
all right, so we have a go-forward plan on, you know, I'll call it the parcel
I have one
analysis.
question though.
Yes,
Sorry. So, Tom, do you have a personal way of setting up these Zoom meetings other than the public one? Or do we need to come up, because I know we used Larry when we had our meetings with Larry, but do you have a way to do this, or do we need to get one from the town, or how are we going to do these meetings?
Well, what we did for the text team, I have a personal Zoom account, but I don't have, it's not the pro version that Larry has. So I've got the 40-minute, time frame. And what we do is I come into a meeting, start it, we go for a half hour, reset the meeting, and then continue on. It was a little cumbersome, but that's how we got through it on the text team.
yeah, I think, Tom, given COVID, they took that 40-minute away, I thought.
I thought that was just for Thanksgiving, for a couple of days.
I also have my own Zoom account, and if you set one up for 10 o'clock I could set mine up for 10:40 and we could just switch in.
Yeah. So I think we can get through it with just the personal Zoom accounts.
Okay.
The Zoom accounts help keep it a little shorter.
Yeah. Also.
Just saying.
Okay, but moving right along, I think I heard the message there. The other thing that was on the list was plastic update, and I'll do a real quick one because the one I want to talk about, we're getting there, is on a survey on NIPS. So let me just do let's see, where is that?
Larry, I just want to do one more thing on this subcommittee before we go there. So I know I have Tom's email. I don't know that I have Karen's. And Tom, do you want to set this up, since you're the one's going to start on Zoom? So you'll need Karen's email as well, right?
I think I have that information.
Okay.
So
as long as you have it, then we just need to figure out when we're going to meet.
no problem.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Larry. Let me interrupt.
No problem. All right. So real quick is that we had a letter from a couple of folks in the community that or from the state, actually, outside of the town, that the state is considering a ban on NIPS, those little plastic and glass bottles. And, you know, we kind of had an offline discussion with Conrad Heedy about, you know, what's the right way to pursue this? I mean, yes, we could we add it to our ordinance, or it'd be a lot more effective if it was handled at a state level, and kind of came to the conclusion that it would be more effective if we, the Conservation Commission, could provide input to the town council to then support the state initiative to ban the NIPS. And as part of that, they have a little survey. So we put this together. You'll see it on the screen. Right now it's in the town planning, the staff has it. And what I wanted to do was to review the questions. Well, I guess I got to back up to get your agreement that that's something the Conservation Commission wants to support. And number two, then look at the questions to see if you're satisfied with these questions. So Kristen?
First of all, yes, I totally support the idea of us doing this. I'm not sure if I support the idea of every question having one's impact, one's not a problem, one's support, like rather than wording it in such a way that each question has the same choice of an answer. Because otherwise you're asking people to, even though they're stacked out in the same, like less to more. So that's just a comment, but also somewhere, a lot of people don't even know what a NIP is. So somewhere it's got to have some kind of intro that says what a NIP actually is.
Yeah, that's the survey intro would have that,
Okay.
right? Yeah, tiny liquor bottles, I guess is the.
Oh, there it is. Yeah.
These are tiny liquor bottles.
Before you even take the survey, somewhere in the heading,
Yes,
should be
no, there'd
clear.
be an intro to the survey itself. The town of Groton is doing a survey, da, 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 and here are the questions. One of the feedback I got though was, as the Conservation Commission, should we even talk about the first one, right? Which, by the way, part of this was sponsored by Mothers for Drunk Driving, by the way. So that's why that was there. And if to me as I'm going, well, if we kind of initiate it, but it's a town survey, then why couldn't we ask that question? But I wanted it to be thrown out to you guys. Michelle?
This is Michelle. I honestly, whether or not it has the increases, is that's not an opinion. There's probably data. So asking people's opinion about that, I'm not sure that's the right approach for that particular question. The same thing with the litter problem. I mean, both of those things they're kind of data. There's data behind both of those things. 3 is definitely an opinion, but I don't know that there's, I don't know. You know, do you believe that it's like, do you believe in climate change? Do you believe the data as opposed to, do you think this is true?
Well, part of it is if you don't believe in climate change, you're not going to be supportive of legislation to address climate change. So part of it is, what is the belief of the citizens in the town? Yes, there's data, but that's a different input to the town council. Part of it is what the community say. Now, the other thing that GCA is doing is reaching out to the liquor store owners and getting their feedback as a subgroup, because you always get what's the impact on businesses, and it's starting to trickle in, but there's a split between some of the liquor stores says I don't want the damn things, and some of the other ones but that's a source of income. I mean, that's another aspect of this.
Well,
yep.
But maybe it's more about the data shows this. Do you feel that's an impact on you personally or something like that? Something, honestly, I just, as a scientist, there's data and there's not. So here's, we know some of these things. Here's what, like we know that people collect all this litter, and what do they see? They see nips. So the indications are this problem. Do you feel that it affects you personally, or have you experienced it, or some, making it more their experience as opposed to their opinion?
Yeah. Do you observe when you are outdoors in Groton, have you observed nips in the environment? Never, sometimes, frequently, all the time, something like that.
Yeah, I would definitely go for more of an experience than an opinion aspect of it, except for the third one. The third one is definitely, should we do this or not? But I really think that you got to have something more concrete in those first 2.
Other comments?
I agree with Kirsten. I think you need to say, it needs to say something like nips create a litter problem, and then come up with a question about how residents feel about that. Because it does, but if I walk in a certain area, I'm not going to see them. When I walk River Road, I could collect a half a basket of them.
Well, they do tend to collect in certain areas. So I think, what I'm hearing is a consensus to support the state legislation for NIPS and to recommend to the town council, because it's going to be the town council to provide a letter of support, not us, right? We provide input to that. The questions I heard were on the structure of the survey itself, not the aspect of doing it. Is that
right?
Correct.
Okay. So the survey as coming from the town, it's now in their hands. So I will reach out to them and provide the feedback I just heard, and see where they're at, because they were kind of chunking through on a survey. So they agreed it was a good thing to do, to have a survey. And now we're just talking about the structure of the survey. All right, so
Who's
I
it?
will, Huh?
Who's administering the survey? Are we administering it or is the town?
no, town.
Town is okay.
Yep, town has a Survey Monkey account and they would be sponsoring it, right? All right, so I will take
Quick,
that one.
quick question.
sorry?
Is, on this is Bray, on the very first question, that's different from the rest of the document. And where I agree with everybody else that what we're looking at here is that it's a source of plastic in the environment that shouldn't be there. And it's sort of next on the list beyond cups and straws and so forth. And there are a lot of people who are upset about seeing so many of those bottles. And that's, do you think there's an environmental impact from this? And there's nothing like that here. Whereas getting into tiny bottles or the risk of driving while under the influence, yeah, probably is, but there's an awful lot of other stuff that's also the risk of driving under the influence that's not being addressed. So that's just, I don't think that the first question actually moves anything forward.
Back to the data question is I remember that there was, when we were doing the plastics removal, there was collection of stuff and then there was percentages of what types of things. Does anybody have that data or remember what the percentage of nips were in the litter that was collected?
I'd have to go back and dig down to find that one again.
Is it possible, Bray, to do that? Because I remember, I thought you had some studies from the University of Connecticut or something that did that. Am I remembering that wrong?
I do not remember, but it'd be one I have to go back and take a look.
Yeah, because that could, yeah, we can't do data without the data. So
I can take
it's not nothing complicated. It's just like, X% of all litter is nips, or X or Y% of all plastic litter is nips, or something. I mean, just a simple thing, nothing complicated.
I'll take a look because I know that drinking water bottles, Poland Springs freshwater bottles, are an element that's out there, and sort of within it, there's so much of it, it has its own category. So that's a good question, whether or not NIPS has risen to the level to have its own category.
I
Yeah,
think,
I
if
hear
I
you.
remember correctly, I think it did. I mean, I thought that was one of the things that stood out, actually.
Yeah, I thought it was there. We had straws and bags and nips
Nips were
and
big, yeah, and something like that.
caps, bottle caps, and then bottles. I mean, so I seem to remember it being in there. I can't pull it out of my memory banks right now. All right, that would be helpful. Yes, Kristen.
I had my hand up. So the only thing I would say is that when this survey comes out, if you recall, we pushed our survey to the point where we got 486 responses. And most of the people who responded, landowners, if the town's going to put out this survey, we want the result of, what probably similar results that we got with the other plastic surveys. So we need to be sure that the survey gets out and it gets answered. And I think we worked hard on the original survey to distribute it like manually and by email and to different conservation groups. So I think we should support this effort. If they're going to do the survey, we should support that a lot of people fill it out.
All right. Fair point.
Oh, and are we still on plastics or are we
Yeah,
still
we're
on
still on plastics.
I just want to say that the effort with GCA has started as far as distributing those appreciation, plastic reduction supporter appreciation stickers. And the effort is going extremely slowly. There's some roadblocks. Some people don't want to talk about it, or they're busy, or the management's not in-house, or it has to go to corporate. So it's turned into a longer term phase in, but there are some stores in downtown Mystic that are displaying our beautiful sticker. So keep an eye out. And I keep saying I'm going to call Kimberly Dreelick and do an article in the paper, and I really am going to get to that maybe this week. That'll happen. So,
All right, she is disposed to do additional articles when I.
good. Yeah, I know. And she's very receptive, and I just haven't gotten around to it yet, but I'll really work on that.
All right. So yeah, kudos to Kim on the articles on the open space plan that she did. I thought she did a pretty good job there. I was gonna, I'm noting in consciousness of the time, the objectives section 7, which was the next thing on the agenda. We talked about the major one I wanted to, which is the new parcel analysis subcommittee. You all have the Excel spreadsheet on that, so we'll take that up at the next one as well. The other one on terms of new business, and we talked about it, is from the Ledyard School and King property. There's 2 local groups kind of organically coming up that want to take on stewardship of those properties. So we're encouraging that. We're at least on the King property, Becky's kind of tracking them to do a documentary. So after it's over, we can kind of say, here's how a group does it. Here's what they did. Here's the result of it. And they're doing some trail blazing and some other things. So I thought that would be an interesting short video. So that's the status on that. I think, Bruce, did you put out those letters that we got on those?
Which
you were,
letters?
yeah, it was a letter from Greg Guild and
Oh, no, that came in after the packet. No, I did not include those.
okay. All right. So I guess formally, I guess they should be in the next packet since we did discuss them. The other thing, okay, we just mentioned the day article. Real quick, let me get through some of these. I did have one other thing to mention. Where did that go? I thought I had the abstract up, but I did mention. Give me 1 second. There it is. Let me share. So one of the things kind of came from right field a little bit. And I was talking on a totally different topic with some UConn School of Business, and it kind of evolved to what was going on. And they mentioned that the students these days are becoming highly conservation minded, climate change minded, and they've set up programs to marry business, business degrees, some science stuff, climate stuff, etc. And they kick off 4 or 5 projects every year with their seniors. And so I said, well, okay, I'll put together an abstract program. So I reached out to Michelle, being an astute administrative educator, whatever.
I am an educator, yes.
An educator. So kind of came up with an abstract for an open space project, and kind of got into looking at getting additional supporting data for the economic model. Because remember, these are business school people who want to be involved in conservation. How to get a better GIS data extract to feed the model, things of that nature. And so I'm going to say, if there's no objections, I was going to submit this abstract. Don't know if we're going to get picked or not picked, but I thought you'd get 10 bright seniors that then go attack this for a couple of months. So that seemed like nothing ventured, nothing gained. And that would provide, some, let's call it reasonably savvy these days. They're pretty savvy on using a lot of this, the GIS, the systems and other things as, and Michelle, I think would really love to get some help there if we can get something going here. So
Yeah, it would be nice
anyway,
if we found some students that wanted to play with this, that's for sure.
yeah. So anyway, so I'll just look, is there a consensus that I should go forward and continue to do this with the support of the council, of the commission?
Yes.
I see head nods.
Why
All
not?
right.
No problem.
Yep. All right. So I'll go do that.
Lorraine, I would just update it. Yeah, I noticed you have all the references. You just pulled a section out of the plan, but you may have to update your reference links and stuff for the data there in your abstract.
Oh, okay. I'll double check that. I did test them and they did work at the time.
Yeah, well, you probably had the document up at the same time, but if they're standalone, I don't know if they may work. But yeah, just the numbering system looks a little weird. They probably will still work.
Yeah, but you're right, it can't hurt to check.
No, I'll check it. All right. Okay, I had just three quick things. I'm in the report of chairman. One is we're gonna do an attaboy to Steve Post. He got his tree warden certificate. He did that test the other, I think it was last month. And Kakiwick was Saturday. Just as an FYI, I did pull some, since it was a Zoom one, I pulled some quick, and I can zip through this pretty quickly. I pulled off a few screenshots from the 43rd annual meeting and conference on Kakiwick. And, real quick, some of the things that they did was, how do you apply science to protect the environment? And oh, by the way, the pandemic, I picked a couple of charts up. One I thought Kristen would like, which is they have different folks working at the state level, and one of them is working on the pollinator pathways.
Yeah.
So I thought that would be a shout out to Kristen, and there's a resource there, and I guess I could send out these pages to you. The other one was on plastics, which I kind of pulled out as we kind of learned, those microplastics. So they're also looking at that aspect of it. And one of the things they did put out is there a way of using nanomaterials to be able to affect that, right? So, I guess there's always hope that science is going to come up with a solution to something that science created. So I thought that was interesting. Another one was on agriculture, that we're actually, our rate of productivity improvements in agriculture is decreasing. And that's a point of concern. So they are looking at micronutrient applications to try and reverse this curve, or at least bend the curve in the right direction. The other thing that I thought of interest, they didn't even have it on a chart, but they mentioned it, that 80% of all the water consumption we use is for agriculture. So it kind of went, oh, that's an interesting factoid that I went, I guess that makes sense. But therefore, anything that goes in here, certainly with what's happening with the climate change, it's going to affect our food production. And if we don't if Mother Nature doesn't kill us, then we'll starve to death. Something will get us as we go through here. There's another section on invasive plant species, which they use a lot of Latin, so I didn't follow it all that well, but there are things coming into state, and it's getting worse, not better. They also had some on insects coming in into the state and causing problems as well. So they talked about that. They had a briefing on the state water plan. I thought this map was interesting, which was, this is kind of a map of surface water in Connecticut. And it looks pretty good. But when you get into it, where's my, that, another interesting factoid, most of the natural water in Connecticut are on wetlands, which I didn't think about. And they said, oh, all those other things that you see, those bodies of water, those are man-made ponds and lakes and reservoirs. That when you really look at what's behind all this stuff, is a lot of the waters are in wetlands, which was an interesting factoid to me as well. Was it? That's the claim they did make. And just to leave with something, like I said, if we don't starve to death, the Mother Nature will go crap on us. Emerging issues, just the amount of, which no big surprise to you guys, frequency and duration, the swings of droughts and high velocity storms, all this stuff, a lot of bad stuff is happening. So it was it wasn't a really uplifting event. I don't know, Tom, did you get that somebody?
No, I think you did a very good job of summarizing everything here in some of the high points that were of interest to that I didn't know about either. You kind of hit all those. So I thought they did a good job as far as what they could put together from a Zoom first time around. As far as from it's good that we're still participating and supporting their efforts. Thank you.
All right, I'll send those charts out to you guys. Send Pete out on Kakiwick. All right, my final point, there's report of staff after me, but there are new elections for the year at our next meeting on January 4th. Just remind you at that meeting that's going to occur. And Bruce, is there anything from the staff that you'd like to provide to the commission?
No, not really too much to add. Just we'll get that survey out on the NIPS probably this week, and we'll have it up on the website. We might make a few changes. We may take out question revolving whether or not NIPS cause drinking and driving, because it's really an environmental survey about trash and not really DUIs. So we might take that out, but we will we'll put that out. And yeah, that's really I think all I have. Congratulations everyone on finishing the open space plan. That's great. I'm going to try to get that on the website as soon as we can too. And I'm glad you guys have your own website now. So, kind of a repository for everything you guys are working on. And so I think it's good. It's you guys are doing really a lot of good work, and I think a lot of people appreciate it.
Thank you. Mr. Olson.
I've got 3 questions for Bruce. One is, have you guys, as far as from the planning department, gotten the budget call from the town manager yet relative to be submitting in the $25,000 a year for the CIP that was established, that's supposed to go active in this next budget cycle?
I don't know, but I can look into that for you. I'm not involved in the budget, but I can certainly ask for you.
Yeah, I appreciate that. Secondly, is the Sustain Connecticut. I know you were working with Deb Jones on that, and I noticed in looking at the state website that there's additional points that you can get for COVID response type of stuff. And I was wondering if you guys have looked at that and taken any actions on it.
We haven't done anything with Sustainable Connecticut this year. Last year we did a lot on it. We got bronze certification for the town, and I guess that lasts for 3 years. So I guess we kind of took this year off in terms of trying to get to silver, but we do intend to pick it up. Actually, probably next year we're going to start picking it up again, because it's kind of a continuing maintenance program. So we haven't, but I actually had a meeting about it last week with one of our new staff members. So we're going to start picking it up again.
Yeah, I just encourage you to take a look, because this COVID stuff's going to probably run most of the next year anyhow. And so there's extra points available there and that kind of stuff because of the way the state is doing this. And then the last question, or more of a comment, as far as you're putting this, I was doing a little quick online search here. I guess towns down towards Bridgeport and stuff have actually gone forward with this NIPS and they've already done their survey internal to the town and sent a letter off to the legislature and stuff. And I was just wondering if you guys have any contact with Bridgeport and what they've done for their surveys and stuff. I just encourage you to take a look at it. And in parallel with that, I also noticed in doing the online searches while we've been talking here, is that the Alcohol Retailers Association is already proposing a 5-cent bottle deposit to expand the bottle regulations for that. And I don't, I'm just saying they're looking at it's kind of political, but I pointed that out to I picked that up for everybody's information. So
Yeah, no, I saw that as well, except there's no mechanism to actually collect and reprocess them. So it's kind of a interesting thing. They just collect more money and anyway, yeah, I don't want to get into that. Karen.
I'm going to pass on it. I don't want to get into it either.
All right. I thought of a couple other things, very, very quick things. In terms of plastic complaints about our new ordinance, we've had a few. Our code enforcement officer, Tom Zanarini's been out there. From what I've heard, no fines have been issued at all. Everybody's been compliant upon notification of the ordinance, and everything's working out well with that so far. And, yeah, that's it. I just want to add that.
All right, good. Bray?
I have a quick question for Bruce. This is on the school building over where Cutler Middle School is. Okay, and behind there, we proposed putting a bridge across the small stream, the Fishtown Brook. And it's a shovel ready project, but the Parks and Rec doesn't have the money. There was some talk about the school building committee that if they could find an extra 40,000 or whatever it would take to do it, it might be left over in the current building process. They'll put it toward the bridge. And I was thinking they've got contractors out there, all sorts of heavy equipment. What a perfect time to do it. I don't know if you know where that process is.
I don't. I recall that conversation. Now, I'm not sure if that was at a Trails Task Force meeting or not, but I remember that. And Diane, the other planner in the office, she handled that project. She's in touch with I think it's Arcadis that's doing the work there. And I can ask her tomorrow, and maybe we can talk about that tomorrow at Trails Task Force, and maybe I'll have some backup for that, because that's a good point. Because they have wetland permits, they have all the approvals they need. They just need the capital.
Right.
Yeah. Okay. I'll look into that.
All right. Well, very good. I again want to congratulate and thank all you guys for getting our 2020 plan out. And then next time we meet, we'll be working on our 2021 objectives. What fun. I'm looking for a motion to adjourn at this point.
Made the motion?
Ray, a motion second. Michelle second. All in favor?
Aye.
It's unanimous. All right, thanks a lot, guys. It's been a long year. We made it through. And we're gonna have another subcommittee meeting though this year. So I'm gonna see you guys, some of you, at least one more time.
Okay, so you want to communicate separately about setting something up,
Yeah,
Larry?
I'll just send out a note like I normally do on setting out a meeting. Yep.
All right. Well, Happy New Year, everybody. May
Yes,
it be better than
happy
2020.
holidays of all kinds.
And
Yeah.
stay safe.
Yeah.
Yep. Stay safe.
I probably won't be here on January 4th, but I'll see you guys February.
All right.
Okay.
Safe travels wherever you're going.
I'm not going anywhere.
What's going on?
Bye.